The first contingency we're going to talk about is the physical inspection contingency. So it's quite a bit of stuff, but it's important to know the things that I'm pointing out are the ones that you really do need to know for the state exam purposes. So physical inspection contingencies allows a buyer adequate time. So remember on that RPA, what we discussed, it's usually 17 days in the car contracts, but it can be any given period of time that is selected to thoroughly inspect a single family home and have experts inspect it prior to moving forward with the purchase transaction. Because remember, contingency makes the contract not binding until the contingency is removed, so it allows an out. Possible inspectors may include a home inspector, roof, HVAC, structural pest, pool equipment, soil inspector, hazardous material, lead-based paint, mold inspectors, so many inspectors. So it's most important that they at least get a home inspection for a buyer because that is giving them a good idea. And if it has a lot of problems, they're not putting a lot of money down on something that is faulty, or they're aware of what they're getting themselves into. So let's see here. So one, buyer's investigation of property condition and home inspections, seller to disclose material facts, and buyer has right to request repairs, physical inspection, contingency removal. So this is basically saying the buyer investigates the property condition, does home inspections. The seller will provide disclosures of material facts. The buyer can then review those disclosures, review the inspections, and then basically has the right to request repairs. But as we know, the seller does not have to respond to those requests to repairs. So the buyer might want them, and if the seller is not going to complete the repairs, the buyer may opt out of the contract. Or if the buyer is okay with the repairs not being completed or what the seller has responded with, the physical inspection contingency would be removed. And right now we are mostly using active contingency removal. So they would use an actual contingency removal form. So we're gonna go into this. So construction definitions from the ground up. So soils report. So agent Able notices a crack in a wall and that the doors do not close properly. So we cannot say what it's about or what caused it. We can only point out that there is a crack in the wall and that the doors do not close properly. And we should advise them to obtain a soils report because that shows there's something with the soil. But we don't know what, but that they would want to get an idea of why there's a crack in the wall and that the door is not shutting properly. So soils report, that's what the state likes to ask about it. So that's what we're covering. Soil conditions, these are the three soil conditions. So expansive, adobe, alkalinity. So these are the three. So when you see these three, just know they refer to soil conditions. You don't actually need to know what they are, but that they are soil conditions. Now, if you see deciduous or exaggeration, those are not soil conditions. Deciduous is a type of tree, for instance. So those are not. That's a question that they have out there. So just need to know which ones are soil conditions and which ones are not. Foundation plan, this is really important. So let me get my pointer here. Let's do a highlighter. Okay, so the footings, these are the things at the bottom of the foundation plan. Now footings can be inside the home as well though. So it doesn't necessarily have to be the exterior of the home. And then you have the sole plate. So that is this part right here. What is the studs and connects to. And then the studs, these are right here. And they're 16 inches on center. You need to know that. 16 inches on center for studs of the interior wall. Now, on the raised foundation, it is an 18-inch minimum. So raised foundations, the crawl space has to be 18-inch minimum, and the footings as well. So that's what you need to know there. Footing, so when you see footing, it's basically the foundation. So just think of them synonymous. A footing can be located in the interior of a house. So it doesn't necessarily have to be the exterior of the home. It could be the interior. Backfill. So for instance, when they are putting the foundation into the home, then they're usually going to move or excavate some of the soil. Well, what they usually do then is to put the soil back where it should be to go against the home. It's called backfill. So as you can see here, backfill, it would be in this space right here. And it's also to make up for that difference between the home and the ground and the soil levels. Infill. Now don't get backfill and infill confused, because infill is an unused area that small commercial developers plan to develop. So they look at unused areas, and that's like an infill location and what they want to do to that area and develop it. So backfill, remember, that's what we put in next to the foundation. And an infill is an unused land that small commercial developers plan to develop. Now a plot plan. So when we're looking at a property and finds its dimensions, this is called a plot plan. So here's the property. We look at the house on it, and where it's at, what the dimensions are, what it looks like. So it's a good idea of where the property is on the plot. Elevation plan. So this shows the exterior view of the building. So if you're actually standing and looking at the property, what you're seeing. So in new homes, for instance, they'll say, hey, there's different elevations to choose from the same floor plan. It's just what the outside of the house is going to look like. So you might have like more of a southern look, or a Tuscan or Italian, something like that, a Mediterranean look. So it's just kind of looking what it looks like on the outside. Elevation plan. Crawl space, remember, minimum height, 18 inches. So studs is 16 inches on center. The crawl space is 18 inches. These are the two numbers you do really need to know. Sole plate. So it's the bottom board that supports the studs that hold up the walls to the house. So again, remember where the footing was, where the foundation goes, the sole plate. Here it is. And that holds up the studs, which are here. And remember, 16 inches on center. Putting it all together. Studs, 16 inches on center. They're the boards used to frame a wood frame house. Maximum space is 16 inches on center. 1 board foot equals 144 cubic inches. So you need to know what a board foot is. This is sometimes what people might use to quote lumber, for instance. It's not super common, but we do need to know about it. So 1 board foot equals 144 cubic inches. And this is where you can do the math to figure it out, for instance. So a board that is 6 inches by 12 inches by 2 inches is 144 cubic inches and is equal to 1 board foot. So remember, when solving volume, let's do a pen here. We do 6 times 12 times 2. So we would do, for instance, 6 times 12 times 2, and that equals 144. To make the math easy, you can do like 6 times 2 is 12 times 12, then we know is 144. You can do 6 times 12, which is, let me do the math here. It is, what is the math? 72? Oh gosh, yeah, 72 times 2. Okay, so that's 1 board foot. Now let's apply this. So for instance, if it's 12 inches by 1 inch by 12 inches, that equals 144 cubic inches, which is 1 board foot. So 12 by 12 by 1. Remember, we have to keep track though if it's inches or feet. So for instance, on this one, here's another one. If it was 12 inches by 2 inches by 6 inches, we have 12 inches by 6 inches by 2 inches equals 144 cubic inches. And we know 144 cubic inches is 1 board foot. Now here's where it gets a little fun, because this one right here is feet. So we have 12 feet by 12 inches by 2 inches. So then what we would look at, we would do this and we'd find out how many inches, cubic inches it is, divide it by 144, and that's because that's 1 board foot, and then we would know it's 24 board feet. So just keep that in mind. We do the math just like we did here. It's 144 cubic inches. So if we divide 144 cubic inches by 144 cubic inches, we get 1 board foot. However, this one, we have 3,456 cubic inches divided by 144 cubic inches, and we get 24 board feet. So some simple math calculations, but it's good to know how to do it. We'll apply it one more time. So if it's 24 feet by 12 inches by 2 inches, then we have 6912 divided by 144, so we get 48 board feet. So these are important to know just to be able to do the calculation. So when you think of board feet, just think of 144 cubic inches because we're dealing with volume, length times width times height. Okay, bearing wall. Bearing wall usually remains intact during remodeling, can be an archway, and usually contains stronger structural members. So bearing walls are really important. They keep the house up, and they usually remain because touching them is really a pain for structural purposes, but also for permits. So it's really important to remember about the bearing wall. That's really all you got to know, though, for state exam purposes. So let's move on. R value. So the higher the R value, the greater the resistance to the passage of heat flow. So if you have, for instance, a higher R value on your insulation, you're going to have greater resistance to heat flow. So it's the better insulation. So just have to remember that. Higher the R value, the better, because it has a greater resistance to the passage of heat flow. EER, energy efficiency ratio. So higher the ratio, better the rating. So we want to have energy efficient. And so that we have that ratio, and higher the ratio, better it is. Joist. So we've talked about floor, sole plate, footings, and we've talked about the studs that are 16 inches on center, but what about the joists? So the joists are the parallel wooden members used to support floor and ceiling loads. So it can be in the ground, the floor, also in the ceiling. So it's important to know the joist could be in the ceiling. The ridge board, so when we're talking about the roof of the house, it is the highest member of the frame house. So right here. There we go. Trusses usually connect to it, but just know ridge board, the highest member of a frame house. And no, we usually don't look that pretty working on it. Flashing is the metal material placed in the valleys of a roof to prevent water seepage into a home. So see where the flashing is here, here, chimney, the valley flashing, window flashing, vent pipe flashing, just to make sure that this stuff does not go into water, does not seep into the home. So it's to protect it. So it's the metal material. So if you see a roof with the metal material, that is the flashing. And it should have flashing. Home inspectors will comment if the flashing is not in great condition too. Wood shingles are nailed to the sheathing. So you just need to know that. So if there's wood shingles, wood shake roof, for instance, they're nailed to the sheathing. That's all you gotta know. So we're gonna then move on to appraisal contingency. So that's it for the physical inspection contingency. If you have questions, please reach out.